All right, Max, you're up. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for inviting me to speak here this evening. My name is Mags and I'm an alcoholic. Um, so it's 8 p.m. here in Ireland, 3 p.m. where you guys are, maybe Eastern time or wherever you are in the world. Um, and yeah, I'm just uh, incredibly thrilled to be here. Just to give a little bit of a backstory, this is my second ever CA meeting. Um, my first one was on Thursday, Kelly, I think we were together at a meeting. And there's a gentleman in the UK here who has taught me what CA is and how that it's okay for me to come and speak at a meeting like this and wouldn't be in breach of our traditions, um, because the preamble that they used at that meeting and everything explained to me about the addiction piece and that it's any mind altering substance and so on. I had a huge apprehension about speaking at CA because I thought I was different. And because I am a member of Alcoholics Anonymous and because my home group is a group of Alcoholics Anonymous, I didn't think that I would be able to carry any sort of message that would be helpful. Um, so I just want to be really transparent about that. And I hope as I talk, I kind of can make some sense and get my thoughts into some semblance of order um, about the journey that I've been on in my recovery. Because the reality of it is, we are all part of a 12-step fellowship. We've had, all being well, had a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps, that we're deeply immersed in a program of recovery and a program of action, whatever our addiction is. And that's what I've come to understand because of what this very kind gentleman has taught me. Um, and that might sound really stupid, but that's just my story up to this point. I've been taught in a particular way about the fellowship, and through this gentleman's guidance, he has enabled me, with the grace of God, to start to have a much more open mind over the last few weeks since his invitation. And there is no coincidence that shortly after that, Terry invited me to speak, and I didn't know it was a CA meeting. So it was like God had a different plan altogether. But my closed mind would have stopped me from having the opportunity to be part of a fellowship that is really it's blowing my mind open. And it is, again, my heart has been blown open by what I've experienced um, through this thing that I've been going through, this little bit of turbulence as to what is this all about? What is God trying to show me? What is this for? And I've experienced a lot of dismantling of my ego, that's for sure. And it's been not only in relation to CA and Alcoholics Anonymous, but a whole load of other stuff. And the dismantling has been very, very turbulent, but it's been one of the most beautiful experiences in the short time that I have been about. And it's demonstrated to me that my illness, 1,000,000% wants me separated, 100% wants me to think that I am so unique that no one will be able to help me. And that in that uniqueness, it has the power to kill me. And you know, my whole thought process going through this little piece of turbulence, my pride has come to the fore, that being what I think other people will think of me because I've crossed the boundary in coming from one fellowship into another. And my pride will kill me, what I think other people will think of me. This illness of addiction, this illness of separation wants me to think that the thing that actually connects every single one of us in this room is the thing that actually separates us, and it's not. It's the thing that connects us. And that one is God. May you find him now. Like it says on page 59 of the big book, that one is God. May you find him now. I don't know how long anybody in the room has been about, and don't be put off by the fact that I am talking about this power greater than myself and that I choose to call it God because it is much easier. But if you are new around or returning and have found the God thing difficult, it doesn't matter what we call our God. It doesn't matter what we call it. What matters is that we have one. You know, there's a significant difference. So I read your message, Terry, that you sent me a few days ago about the format of this meeting, and suggested that I talk about what's on my heart. And I was so glad that when I came on to the meeting, you said the same thing again, just to talk about what was on my heart. And I have to say that over the last couple of days, since having this experience in CA, oh my goodness, I have genuinely never been so grateful for being a recovered alcoholic. I have genuinely never experienced the depth and weight of gratitude that I've experienced over the last couple of days. And it might sound so bizarre, but through all of that turbulence, this program is a miracle of healing. That's what it tells us in We Agnostics, is an absolute miracle of healing. And to know and to be reminded, not to know, but to be reminded with these beautiful people that this is a miracle. And the word is probably used around the world in all sorts of different ways and used very loosely, but every single one of us sitting in this room is a miracle of healing. And this gift has been given us, like it says in the big book, it has been given us. Whether we believe it or not that it has been given to us, it has been given us. I have been chosen for whatever reason in God's existence and world. I've been chosen for a reason to be a person with an addiction. It doesn't matter what that reason. I know because of the beauty of this program of action and program of recovery, it's to be able to be more useful to God. That's my job. I have a new employer, like it says on page 63 in the third step promises. I have a new employer. And when I was going through all of this little bit of, do I go and speak at this CA meeting? They've asked me to be of service. My ego was fighting and, you know, this defend and attack, shall I, won't I? Nonsense going on, absolute and utter nonsense. And I just reached a point where I was like, okay, God, you just got to give me an answer here. You've got to give me an answer. And it wasn't necessarily a direct answer. It was more actually a question. I was on the bus on the way to work. I just said, just take this stupid fight that I'm having with myself, just take it away and just show me what you'd have me do. And the little words were given to me. Who do you work for? And in that moment, I was like, oh my God, who do I work for? Yes, I am a special agent of God. It tells us in We Agnostics. You know, rather than seeing ourselves as intelligent agents, spearheads of God's ever advancing creation. I can't advance anything if I'm sticking around in this head of mine. And you talked about it at the beginning, Terry, you know, this willingness, this honesty, this open-mindedness. You know, it's not how we do this. Chapter 5, How It Works, tells us how to do this stuff. Well, part of it anyway. The willingness, the honesty, the open-mindedness. When you break that down, it's who does this for us. It's a big difference. And this ability to have willingness every day, honesty every day, and an open mind every single day is the gift that has been given to me as someone who once suffered from alcoholism and who now doesn't suffer from a hopeless state of mind and body. I have recovered from that hopeless state of mind and body. And my problem over the last little while has been the fact that my mind has snapped shut. The worldly clamours have risen to the surface. All of the stuff that I think in my head that matters, which actually doesn't. You know, matter is physical. Spirit isn't. And I've been going to the absolute physical matter of all of the external factors in this world. Yet before I moved into my third step decision, you know, I stand at this turning point. The turning point is, are you going to turn in to the internal because that's what this is all about? Or are you going to turn out to the external and deal with all those worldly clamours? Are you going to continue to fight with your warring self? Or are you going to go and look inside for your infinite self? Because that is all that matters. And the only way that I can go inside and find that infinite self is to get rid of all of those blocks, to get rid of all of those things, those causes and the conditions, like it says on page 64, you know, my alcohol, our addiction was but a symptom. We had to get down to the causes and the conditions. But before I did all of that, you know, that's step one, the willingness to admit, just to let the idea in. If I go and see a movie here, I buy a ticket and the ticket admits me into the movie theatre. So all I had to do was to let the idea in that I was powerless, that my life had become unmanageable. You know, to understand eventually, because I hung about in the rooms and I did nothing for 18 months, really. Other than, yeah, I just listened as best I possibly could. But to be able to let that idea in and to understand that I've got no choice, that I've got no control, that I've got no power over this thing that I'm addicted to. That no matter how many times I try a different way, it is never, ever, ever going to work. You know, that step one process that all of us go through to keep on turning the pages, turning the pages, turning the pages, turning the pages. There's a friend of mine that says to me, you know, Mags, there aren't any pictures in the big book, but there's a load of mirrors, and every single page is a reflection of yourself. And that's what this program of action, this program of recovery gives to me. You know, this big book was written nearly 90 years ago. Not one single word of it has changed, but it has the ability to change me. Because with the grace of God, a sponsor took my hand and put it into the hand of the God of my own understanding. And things started to change. And I didn't even realize it was happening. I didn't even realize it was happening. I just kept showing up and doing what they told me to do. I didn't like doing what they told me to do. But the reality of it was, like it says at the bottom of page 25, there is no middle of the road solution. I could go on to the bitter end, blotting out the consciousness of my intolerable situation, or I could accept the spiritual help. At that point, I had no other option than to accept the spiritual help. I'd been doing the hokey cokey, or as the Americans call it, the hokey pokey, I think, that dance, in, out, shake it all about. And I wasn't doing it very, very well. I became very discombobulated in the end, and I couldn't even keep the routine of that. You know, I had no other choice in the end than to be put into a rehab facility for 3.5 months because I couldn't stop putting this substance into my body. I never thought I'd become a daily drinker, and I did. I never thought I'd become an hourly drinker, and I did. I didn't think that alcohol or drugs would ever appear in my life, and it did. And the reason why they appeared in my life was to be able to give me more of an ability to drink, and so on and so on and so on. The cycle continued. And I went into that treatment facility, and guess what they told me? I thought they were going to give me some other miracle because I went in there and it was run by nuns. I thought they were going to give me the miracle that they have. And what they told me was, guess what? You've got to get a big book. You've got to work the steps like the desperation of a drowning man. You've got to have a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps. They didn't give me another solution. They gave me the one that you guys have been giving me all along. I was like, really? Really? And I spent 3.5 months in that facility with 42 other women, plus the nuns. This was not a good concoction. In any good day, it was like an episode or a rundown of the Sound of Music. There was singing, there was dancing, there was praying, Mother Superior. At one point, I thought I was Mother Superior. I was running the show in there as well, telling these nuns what they should be doing. 42 women I lived with. You see, that was a bit of a problem too, because I didn't really like women. You know, you came into my home group at the time and you had a beautiful designer handbag. I didn't very much like you. If you came in with a fake designer handbag, I didn't much like you either. There was no middle of the road solution in any way, shape, or form. And there is another little movie that I love. I shouldn't be mentioning all of these external things because it's, you know, against our traditions. But anyway, I'm on a roll. Who really cares at this point? I never knew that God was going to bring all this to mind. Yeah. But when I was in that treatment facility, there's the nanny with the carpet bag, and she takes the tape measure out of the carpet bag and she measures her height. She measures the two little children, the bank's children. And then she measures herself with the measuring tape, and it says practically perfect in every way. That was me. I thought I was practically perfect in every single way. So why would you guys be telling me that I needed to do all of this work to find out what was wrong with me? You know, my defects of character? Don't be stupid. I ain't got any of them. Shortcomings? Don't even know what you mean. And the moral inventory of myself? Get out of here. I had nothing to look at. Yet, those 42 women in there started to show me what life was all about. Those nuns started to show me what life was all about. And there is a point to why I'm telling you this backstory. There was a nun in there, we called her Sister Mary Happy Feet. She loved to dance. And she, in one of my tantrum days, we had come out of a prayer and meditation session. I wasn't very happy at the time. And she took me to one side and she held me by the hand and she said to me, Margaret, the problem is you know too much. You know too much. And she was giving me her version of that set-aside prayer. And she also knew that my ego was the size of this universe. And she just said to me, go small. And she brought her hands just deep down within me. She said, go small. And I imagined myself as a little Lego person, you know, go small. And this lady had so much insight into me. Of course she did. She was a perfect child of God. And she knew that I was a perfect child of God. I just didn't know that at the time. And the funny thing about it is that when I left that facility, I opened the very same big book that's sitting in front of me. I went back to my sponsor. I opened the big book. And it was like every single word in this program of action, this program of recovery had changed. Like every single word. There's a friend in my home group that said the big book fairies had come in and started to change the words. Well, I understand that the fairies hadn't come in. The leprechauns hadn't come in to change the words. What had already started to happen was this psychic change, this personality change. Something had switched. And I didn't know how. All I do know is that in that facility, one night I got on my knees and I asked God to remove my alcoholism and that I would do for him what he needed me to do for the rest of my life. And the next morning I woke up and it was removed. Like literally, it was removed. And I've been reminded recently, and this is one to ponder. I just think this is so beautiful, and it's not from the big book, but it's a reminder about the importance of prayer and meditation. And when we ask, we will receive. Anywhere in the big book where it talks about asking, it's basically a prayer. And that Kelly must be bored hearing this, but I just it's a really important part of my prayer life, and that, you know, every single one of us in this room this evening, this afternoon, is sitting in a prayer that we once asked for. And if you don't believe that, every single one of us is sitting in a prayer that someone else asked for us, and it has been answered. And the more we ask, the more we receive. It may not be in the way that we want to receive it, when we want it, but it happens. That's what I've come to understand in the fellowships. That's what I've come to believe. I've come to believe that. You know, in some of the rooms here in Belfast, they don't give an accurate interpretation of the 12-step program, as was the request of Bill W. back in 1942. They give everything but. And my responsibility, having had a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps, is to provide an accurate interpretation of the 12-step program to newcomers so that they may enjoy the life that we all enjoy in this recovered state. And the word interpretation is so important to understand. It's not my personal interpretation. It's not Lance's personal interpretation. It's not Kelly's or Gina's personal interpretation. You know, interpretation also means clarification. It also means explanation. It also means to decode. I have to give this interpretation that is set out in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's not for me to recode it and tell somebody something different from what has been put into this book. You know, the guys that wrote this, the guys and girls that wrote this, took time. They were so convinced being moved by the evidence, that they chose to put it into words. And when they put it into words into a book that was bound and therefore safe and protected, a new light entered the world for the addict. That's what it tells us in the foreword to the second edition. A new light entered the dark world of the addict. And every single time we go through the book with another person, there's lots that's brought to light for me through that other individual. That's why it's so important to carry this message, to work intensively, one with another, to identify wholeheartedly, not to compare, like you said at the beginning of the meeting, Terry. So, you know, I came out of that facility and I started to work the steps. Eventually, like the desperation of a drowning man, which were the clear-cut directions in the first instance. You know, I went into step 2. In the rooms here, they don't translate that in an accurate way either, as was Bill W.'s request. You got to get a God before you start the steps. No, you don't. You got to believe before you got to get into the steps. No, you don't. That's not what the instructions say. The treasure trove that is chapter 4, We Agnostics, says something completely different to that. It doesn't say that you have to believe now. It doesn't say that you have to have faith in God now. All we simply have to have is faith in this process. Keep showing up, keep on turning the pages. When it gives you an instruction, take the instruction. When they ask a question, they normally answer the question. And when they ask a question and don't give you the answer doesn't matter. So in We Agnostics, do you believe or are you willing to believe? Either way, we assure you you're on your way. We emphatically assure you you're on your way. The answer to that question at that point doesn't matter. Matter is physical. We're in the world of the spirit. That treasure trove that keeps on giving us more and more and more reasons why we should think about this power greater than ourselves, no matter how small that conception of God may be, no matter how small. You know, the realm of the spirit is broad and roomy, all inclusive, never exclusive. And my sponsor kept on laboring. It felt as if they were laboring the point. And it got to the stage where I was like, okay, I get it. And then he turned the page again. And there was another reason why I should think about this God. More words for God, Spirit of the universe, friend, my new employer, Father of light. Doesn't matter which one, like I've said, what matters is you've got one. And if you don't have one, well, that's exactly the purpose of the book, to enable you to find one. And where will you find it? Right deep down inside you, inside every single man, woman, and child. Right now, you might think there's nothing there, but there is an untapped and unsuspected inner resource. And this program of action, and I keep saying it over again, and program of recovery enables us to find that. And as time has gone on, this relationship with this power just gets more and deeper and deeper and deeper and more effective, because we've had these deep and effective spiritual experiences. I truly understand now that I don't have to keep going and searching for the spiritual experience. I'm living it. I'm in it. In this way of living, my life is a spiritual experience. From the moment I open my eyes to the moment I close them, and even in my sleep. Even in my sleep, God has given me the corrective measures. My life is a spiritual experience, as long as I show up and do His work well, as long as I follow the clear-cut directions. And I'm making that decision in step 3. We complicate the life out of this for the newcomer. And then we fill them full of the fear of God for step 4 and step 5. Oh my God. And when it's so simple, when you follow the clear-cut directions, in making this decision, do you want a cup of tea today, Mags, or do you want a cup of coffee? I'll have the tea today. It's that simple. I'm just making the decision. But in making the decision, here's the thing. I'm cutting away all of the other stuff that I've tried up to this point that hasn't worked. A friend of mine talks about this in the rooms. A surgeon makes an incision, so they cut into, whereas a decision is to cut away. So in making the decision to do this, and making the decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand Him, I'm getting rid of all of the other stuff that hasn't worked, and I'm doing this. But the turning my will and my life over doesn't happen in 3. I'm just making the decision to do that. The turning my will and my life comes 4 through 9. And as I turn the pages, I start to clear the decks. I start to clear the blocks that are deep down inside me. What I came to realize in my step 4 was the baggage that I've been carrying. The only way that I can describe it is if you took all of the skyscrapers in New York City and squashed them all into Central Park, that's what was inside me. I couldn't see you. I couldn't hear you. And I was blocked from the sunlight of the Spirit as a result of that. There was no way you were getting into my heart. There was no way. The blocks were so high, they were so deep, nothing was getting in, and therefore I had to get those cleared. And the only way that I could clear them was doing this fearless. For the newcomer, it's so incredibly important. It's not a fearful moral inventory of ourselves, it's a fearless moral inventory of ourselves. There's nothing to be afraid of. If anybody hasn't done this step yet, there's nothing to be afraid of. Actually, 4 through 9 are one of the most beautiful, prayerful, 4 through 7, sorry, are one of the most beautiful, prayerful exercises that I've ever experienced. And I've done it a few times now. And I said this the other night as well at the meeting. It's unbelievable, and I didn't realize it was happening at the time, but my sponsor, somehow or other, through the clear-cut directions in the big book, smashed me into smithereens in the most kindest, most beautifulest, most compassionate way. Smashed me into little pieces of glass. And somehow or other, through step 5, started to put me back together again, where I could see myself in a completely different way. The only way I can articulate it is that I could look at myself. It was as if all of these little pieces of glass were put into this beautiful multicolored mosaic, And I could actually, when I sat down to admit to myself, to God, and another human being, and it's important what order that step in the short form is displayed on page 59 as well. You know, admitted to God first, myself, and another human being, the exact nature of my wrongs. And in being able to look at that colourful mosaic, I was able to see my innermost self. I was able to see the person that God wanted me to be. I was able to be rid of all of the resentments, the fears, and all of my conduct and behaviours within my sex conduct. I could see myself in all the glory of God. You know, what a gift to be rid of that baggage, all of those resent feelings from the past that came into my mind in this moment and broke the relationship and the ability to have a relationship with you, because I was doing my thinking from things from the past, when in actual fact, in this moment, all I need to do is to drop into the awareness. There is one who has all power. Again, may you find him now. And to be able to drop into that awareness in any given moment in the day is one of the most beautiful gifts ever presented. I struggled a bit with 6 and 7. Yeah. The willingness, I prayed for it. It came. I was clinging on to things that were objectionable. In the first round of the steps, I was clinging onto those things that were objectionable. You take the bits that I want you to take, God, and I'll just hang on to these couple of bits over here because I can still sort this out. But what happened? Of course, what it says in the actor running the show, I was wrestling satisfaction with this world if I could only manage well. And I got to the point again where I could blot out the bitterness, I could blot out the intolerable situation, or I could accept the spiritual help. And I'll never forget it to the day I die, the first round through the steps. In my step 6 and 7, I had caused myself so much pain and clinging on to these things that were objectionable. I couldn't take it anymore, and I had to accept the spiritual help. And I went into the room next door and I got on my hands and knees. I put my head on the floor. I was like literally on the floor and just said, God, you got to take it, good and bad. Take it all, because I have no clue what I'm doing here. And you've got to guide me. You've got to direct me. You've got to show me what all of this is for. You see, the problem with me is I automatically go to my default position, which is a closed mind. The willingness is the thing that I have all the time. The honesty, yeah, dubious. Maybe sometimes I'm not perfect. None of us are. You know, we're in God's eyes, we are, of course. But there's sometimes these human frailties that kick in, and thank God we have our daily reprieve steps to help us with that, this dishonesty and bringing things to the light. But yeah, this closed-mindedness will cause me to have more pain until I can take it no longer. And then all of a sudden, boom, I've got to release again. And in that release, everything changes. And when I went into my steps 8 and 9, this is where my heart was blown open. This is where, oh my goodness, space was created somehow for more God to be poured in through those inventories and turning my will and my life over, those blocks being removed. It didn't feel like Central Park with all the skyscrapers any longer. I felt lighter. My mind was clearer. And my heart was blown open. So much so that I was able to sit in front of the man that I hated and to make the amends. To no longer be the victim. To understand that I'm never a victim. Because there's not one single person in this universe, on this planet, whatever, that can do me any harm. I've asked for his protection and care with complete abandon, not only with my addiction, but in everything within my life. There's not one person that can do me any harm. And I will never be the victim, because it's never about the other person, ever. It is never what is disturbing me in my life is never, ever, ever about the other person. It's all of the internal stuff that's happening inside me that is causing me the disturbance that is rising to the surface to be healed. Every single time. My life is a reaction. How I react to you is where the healing comes if I'm being disturbed in any single way. And that's why that step 10 is so incredibly important. It's a gift. It's an absolute gift every single day to watch, to ask, to turn, to watch the selfishness, the dishonesty, the resentments, the fear, to ask God to remove them in the instant and resolutely turn my thoughts. Boom, 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 boom. Top of page 20, it talks about the fact that as a next problem drinker, my very life depends upon my constant thought of others. I didn't see that line for the first 2 years of my recovery. And then I was sitting with a sponsee and I read, I was like, oh my God, this is what this is all about, this constant thought of others. And it's not, don't get me wrong, I'm not running around the streets of Belfast like Mother Teresa, picking people off the streets and taking them home and giving them a home for the rest of their lives. That's not what my life is about. I constantly turn my thoughts, but my thoughts become my words become my actions. And if I'm in a bad day and a bad shape and I'm having bad thoughts, those bad words will come and those bad actions will come. Whereas if I ask God to remove all of those things and my thought life is placed on a much higher plane where I can rise above my problems, then things start to change. My step 10 and 11, I say this all the time when I'm working with others as well. My step 10 and 11 is not about me feeling better. That is the byproduct of practicing the spiritual principles. That 100% is the byproduct. But my step 10 and 11 is about making me more effective in 12. To be able to carry this message and to practice these principles in all of my affairs. 11, seeking through prayer and meditation to improve my conscious contact with God every day is just a precious gift as well. It might sound, well, what's the difference? But in my prayer and meditation, I pray with God. This is a relationship where I'm with God. I pray with God. I don't pray to God. And that changes the trajectory of that relationship as well. And in doing so, I live in 10, I learn in 11, and I grow in 12. My growth comes when I sit in front of another person and try to take them through this program, to watch the light come on in their eyes, to see their shoulders drop when they drop the burden of everything that they've been carrying in their lives. And we stand shoulder to shoulder, working with others to ensure permanent recovery. In the foreword to the second edition, it talks about that. Intensive work, strenuous work ensures permanent recovery. In my naivety, when I first came about, I thought it was just my own permanent recovery. But I now understand that it's permanent recovery across the world. We're superheroes. We're saving the world. We're changing the world. One addict at a time. Because when I sit in front of another person and give them what has been given to me, which is the truest form of Alcoholics Anonymous or the big book, we're changing the world. We're special agents of God. That's what it tells us. I talked about it earlier on. The thing for me is I have a thinking problem. When I'm not in the addiction, I no longer have a drinking problem. I have a thinking problem. And my thoughts can alter the trajectory of my day. When my mind is closed, it's not beneficial. I read something earlier today and I thought it was beautiful. My mind is like a parachute. It doesn't work when it's not open. And a parachute will give me a safe landing if I ever get the courage to do that, to jump out of a plane. But the parachute gives you a safe landing. When my mind is closed, I'm never safe landing. When my mind is open and the power can get in, I'll always have a safe landing. always. Even through the turbulence, I'll always have a safe landing. The answers will come. The answers are always given to me. So I think I've talked enough now. I'll wrap up with this. When we tap into that resource that is inside every single one of us at any given millisecond of the day, it always knows what I need. It actually doesn't need my help. All I have to do is to start to keep on taking action. That inner resource knows how to take care of me, doesn't need my help. All I have to do is keep showing up and keep on taking the action. It's as simple as that. I tried every trick in the book, outside of the book, to get this life of recovery. Not just a relief, but a life of recovery. And I made my life more difficult in trying everything outside the book. But in actual fact, the easier, softer way is to do this. It's to show up, it's to take the action. And in taking the action, you will 100% have a life beyond your wildest dreams. It says it, and all of those promises have come true in my life. That's the God's honest truth. They've come true in my life. But it takes work every single day, and I don't always like doing it. But I get paid very well by my new employer. I get paid very, very well. The peace of mind is priceless. The peace of mind is priceless. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. Thank you for listening to me and letting me ramble on.
Thank you so much, Megs. That was awesome.